Well, you see, the fountain pen users, they say the darndest things, so today we're gonna be doing a fountain pen shootout. That must have been the worst Bill Cosby imitation ever. So today let's just have a look at two pens. Lamy Safari, Parker IM. The two pens don't look alike at all, but they're the same price, and that's why someone requested a shootout between these two pens, and I think that makes sense. Because if you're in the market for, say, a $22, $24, $25 pen, which one do you pick? I'll talk about both pens. I have separate reviews of either pen on my channel. If you want a little bit more of an in-depth view, you can check those out if you want. I'll show you how to take the pens apart. I'll show you how they write, and first I'll just talk about them just very briefly. Two pens. The Lamy Safari is a plastic pen. It's all plastic. You can get the All-Star, which is made of aluminum. I've used one of those. It's very, very light. Don't expect a heavy metal feel, but it's just plastic. You just get a metal clip. You've got this very peculiarly shaped section with those facets. I hope you can see that. This is the black version, highly reflective. I kind of like that. Very typical shape. It's flat on this end and then rounded off on those ends. Difficult to show you that, but if you ever go to a shop and you see them, that's true. You'll be prepared for that. We have an ink window, which is useful if you want to see how much ink you've got left. Right now I've got the converter piston pulled all the way. Let's see. There you go. That's a little easier so you can see how much ink there's in there. Today I've got the fine nib because the person who requested this, I wanted to see fine nib. That's fine. I had one lying around. Usually I would prefer a broad nib, but this one was adequate. The pen posts, typical, fairly nice size, I would say. It's quite light, being all plastic. The section is not for everyone. Those facets, some people love it. I don't have any problems with it, but some people, especially with very large hands, find this uncomfortable to use. I know. Again, for me it wasn't a problem. Takes Lamy cartridges or a Lamy converter, and that's pretty much all there's to it. I think these pens are a very nice deal for the amount of money you pay. You get a very nice pen. The broad nib I got with this is super wet. It's a great flowing nib. I absolutely love it. Then we have the Parker IM. This one is all metal, so it's heavier by definition. I think it looks a little classier. As the Safari comes in a bunch of colors, so if you don't like black, you can get something else. This one comes in a bunch of finishes too. I got the black and gold. I think it looks classy. Simple pen. Black, shiny, lacquered metal. A gold grip section. Might have been nice if it would have been black. Now it sort of goes with the whole gold highlight theme they seem to be aiming for here. Takes a converter, either the Parker push type or the twist type. Both pens have steel nibs. At this price point, you're not going to get gold. You may get gold plated. I got this one in a medium. I think it's a decent pen. For the price, you know, with the metal, it's quite heavy. I mean, relatively heavy. It's not aluminum. It's some type of metal, so it actually has some weight to it. Again, decent size, nice grip section. I don't use this pen a whole lot. Actually, I don't know why. Now that I've used it again for the shootout, I actually decided to leave the ink in and, you know, use it in for daily writing a bit more. So very decent. So I would say, if you're looking for something that feels extremely decent, you know, you may want to consider the IM. If you just want an everyday writer you can take anywhere and, you know, throw around, this one will work. It's plastic, it's a little bit more sensitive. Someone steps on this, it'll crack, you need a new pen. Someone steps on this, it's going to be dented, I'm sure, but it will probably still write because it feels very decent. And that's a big difference. I think that's all I can say. Again, check out the reviews if you want more in-depth information. I'll show you how to take them apart. I'll link them up and I'll do a writing sample. And I hope that's going to be useful. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Okay, so the Parker IM and the Lamy Safari. Let me show you how to take these apart. Let's start with the Parker IM. It has one of these Parker push type converters, which means that there's a little sliding thing here which you can push, and there's also a twist type converter, which is more like other converters, I guess. It has a little ball in there, and you can open these up. There we go. So the ball will just make sure that ink doesn't stick to the end of the converter, and that's pretty much all there's to it. The good thing about being able to open this up like this is you can put some extra silicone grease on there if it starts to move a little difficultly or something. And that little ball, make sure you don't actually lose that when you pull it open. It may just fly out. Okay, then we have the section. The section has, of course, the nib of the feet in there. You can actually remove those, which is fairly easy if you've done it once. You can just pull them out. They are friction fit. The first time this may be a little difficult. If you really want to remove them, you can just put them in some hot water, just the section, and then try to move. That may soften. I think there's a type of glue or some kind of stuff in there that will keep this in place. And of course you should ask yourself, do you really want to remove the nib of the feed? It really shouldn't be difficult shouldn't be necessary for cleaning purposes. You can just flush out the pen, but if you really want to do it, then I guess you can. Nib and the feed, they separate. As you can see, there's a little hole thing in the feed which will keep this in place. It sort of slides in place. It's not really clicked in place. Then you can put this in. I think it's completely round, so it doesn't really matter how you put it in there, as long as it's in there all the way up to the back, both nib and feed. This sort of clicks in place there, and it works. Safari converter. There's a little ring there which is actually metal. You can slide that off, and then you can just remove the piston housing unit, and just, you see, operate it like this. Again, add a little bit of silicone grease there every once in a while. That will ensure smooth operation and a good ink seal. Here we have the nib. You can pull that off. It's very easy if you can't do it like that. The first time it'll be a little more difficult. Put a bit of tape, like Scotch tape, on there. You can just pull it off. It's easier. Now we have the feed. You can take it out. It's often a bit difficult, especially the first time. Again, ask yourself whether you really want to do that. If you do, you can take it off. You even can take this little bit off the feed. I'm not exactly sure what the point of that is, but you can do it if you want to. If you put it back, please be aware. There's a notch on the bottom end of the feed, and there's a groove in the section. If you misalign that, you may ruin the pen, because you may never get out the feed again. It really has to click in place, and you may not feel you're doing something wrong, but then it's very, very, very difficult to get it out. So beware of that. Here we have the nib. Put it back in place. Today I'll be using a fine nib because the owner the person requesting the video wanted to see a fine nib, and I happen to have one lying around. So there you have it. I'm going to ink up the pens. Let's use some Quink for that, because one of the pens is a Parker. Quink Blue, a very simple blue ink, but nice. And the Parker there we go. Okay. I'll grab some paper and I'll do a writing sample. Okay, so I'll start to write with the Parker IM. Nib is medium. Ink is Quink Blue. A nice smooth nib, feels well, pleasant to use. Lamy Safari, again same ink of course. Nib is fine. As you can see, the fine Lamy nib is about as wide as the as the Parker medium. I don't really see a difference. There's a small difference, but it's not very huge. Flexibility. You see, I can squeeze out some line variation there. With this one, it's more difficult. Fast writing. No problems there. No problems there, so the feed keeps up well. Wetness, as you can see, a nice even patch of ink. This is a pretty wet pen, fairly wet nib. Seems a little drier, but it's not an extremely dry pen. I mean, that is still very wet. That, as you can see, even though it was written later, is a little less wet. So there you have it. The the Safari. Please note that the broad nib Safari is very wet. At least my nib is very wet. I think these are two very nice pens. If I were to choose one, if I were to go for class, I would say this. The all metal, feels heavier, feels a bit more decent. This feels plasticky. Of course, you could get the Lamy All-Star in aluminum, but that's, you know, it's not a lot heavier. I know that pen, I've used it. This one's definitely the heavier pen. So if that's what you're looking for, a pen that feels very decent, etc., I would go for this. If you just need a very simple everyday writer, you don't care much about the looks, you just want something that performs every time, and I think the Lamy is an excellent pen. So it really depends. I mean, pens are like tools. It depends on what you want to do with it. If you want to impress people, I think this one is better. If you just want something you can rely on, I think this one is just as great, if not better. So it's really up to you. I hope this comparison was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.